The forest was quiet except for the restless song of crickets and the soft rustle of wind through the tall pines. Above, the stars pierced the canopy, scattered like faint lanterns over the clearing. In the center, a campfire burned steadily, its flames snapping and sending sparks into the night. 7 campers sat around it, their faces half lit, half hidden in the flickering glow. Marshmallows blistered and sagged on bent wire hangers, the sweet smell mingling with smoke and the faint tang of summer air. Laughter rose and fell in uneven bursts, edged with nervous energy that always accompanies shadows grown long. 2 counselors sat nearby, their shirts marked with the long hours of the day, their shoulders relaxed but watchful. The head counselor, Jason, leaned forward on the log, the firelight carving sharp lines across his broad face. He reminded the campers that they had all heard the usual stories. The man with a hook for a hand, the ghost that followed home. Stories like those, he explained, were meant only to frighten. Then his voice dropped lower, steady and deliberate. He told them that these woods carried a different story, one not passed down in books, or whispered merely to scare children. This tale, he said, was said to be true. Sunlight filtered through the tall pines, scattering bright patches across the campgrounds. The morning carried all the usual noise of camp, shouts, footsteps, the clang of tin trays. But for Nathan Glass, it all felt distant, as though he stood a step apart from the world around him. Nathan moved quietly along the fringe of the morning activity, keeping to the shadows while the other campers shouted and ran past. He adjusted his crooked glasses, tugged at the hem of his shirt, and kept his gaze low. Lunch tables, arts and crafts, even the counselors' calls to join in. He let it all wash over him without stepping forward. At the far edge of the mess area, Nathan found a small patch of shade. He balanced his plate on his lap, scanning the clearing for details no one else seemed to notice. A chipmunk darting along the log, a hawk circling high above. The way sunlight glimmered on dew-soaked grass, the world was loud and bright, but he moved through it like a shadow, quiet and observant, unbothered by the noise around him. By mid-afternoon, Nathan grabbed his bag from his cabin and made his way to a secluded bench near the edge of the woods. Opening the small notebook he always carried, he sketched the trees and jotted down observations about the campers' movements, letting the hum of the forest settle him. Here he was unseen. Here he felt safe. As night fell, the sky deepened to a rich inky black. One by one, stars appeared, scattered like sparks across the heavens. The other campers had begun to settle into their cabins, voices fading to quiet murmurs. Nathan waited until he was sure no one was watching, then slipped away, careful not to disturb the soft brush underfoot. He made his way into the forest, seeking a spot where the canopy opened wide enough to see the sky. After a few minutes of weaving between trunks and low branches, he found a clearing, wide, open, and untouched by the shadows of the surrounding trees. He dropped to the ground in the center, hands clasped behind his head, and let the night stretch out above him. Time passed almost unnoticed. Nathan's eyes traced the constellations, the faint twinkle of distant planets, the way the stars seemed to dance across the heavens. For a while, the world beyond the clearing, noise and chatter, faded away. He was lost in the sky, weightless and still. When he finally sat up, ready to head back, a sound froze him in place, a faint rustling among the trees. He held his breath and listened. every instinct telling him something had moved where it shouldn't. Slowly, he scanned the edge of the clearing, squinting into the dark. Then he saw them, glowing red eyes, floating high, at least 9 feet off the ground, staring back at him from the shadows. The next morning, it was evident that something had happened. Nathan's bunkmates discovered he never went to bed the night before. After telling the counselor, a search for Nathan commenced. Local park rangers and the sheriff were called immediately. By mid-morning, search parties fanned out across the forest, calling Nathan's name, scanning the underbrush, and checking every trail and hidden nook. Hours passed, with no sign of him. The sun climbed higher, and the searchers moved carefully through the trees, scanning every branch and underbrush. Every snapped twig or rustle of leaves made them start. But Nathan was nowhere to be found. Later that afternoon, a park ranger discovered a pair of glasses in a clearing. The ground was slightly disturbed, showing impressions as if someone had been lying there hours earlier. A counselor quickly confirmed that the glasses belonged to Nathan. Throughout the day, campers couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. During a morning hike, a few of them and a counselor said they felt like they were being watched. Branches snapped nearby, shadows moved too fast to be anyone in the group, and rustling in the underbrush made them jump. Most tried to ignore it or blame it on squirrels, but the tension stayed, lingering quietly through the forest. Later, a camper riding the zipline across the lake claimed to have seen a dark shape among the trees on the far shore. It towered above the surrounding foliage for a moment, then vanished before anyone could confirm it. That night, just as the first campers were drifting off, a sharp thump struck the side of one of the cabins. Most assumed it was a pine cone or a small rock fallen from the massive tree overhead, but it still made several campers sit up, listening for more sounds in the darkness. Rumors spread like wildfire from cabin to cabin. Soon news arrived of a missing hiker a few miles away on the other side of the lake. Campers grew jumpy from the shadows and rustles in the forest, convinced they saw something moving just beyond their sight. Later, 2 older campers, a boy and a girl, slipped away to a quiet beach along the lake, seeking a private moment together. As they were alone on the beach, something suddenly attacked. The girl's scream pierced the night, carrying back to the camp where a nearby counselor froze for a moment before sprinting with the camp directed toward the sound. As they arrived at the scene, they were met with a frightening sight. Scattered clothing lay abandoned on the sand, and dark streaks of blood marred an old fallen tree trunk and the sand in front of it. The counselors exchanged tense glances at one another. A park ranger, determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances and the strange sightings, ventured into the forest that night. He carried a shotgun slung across his back and a camera in hand, moving carefully through the dense undergrowth, guided only by the moonlight and the faint sounds of the forest. After hours of climbing and tracking, he reached the top of a steep cliff overlooking the valley where most of the strange events had occurred. He set up a small camp there, laying out quietly so he could observe without being seen. As the night stretched on, the ranger became restless. His senses were on edge. Then came the noises. At first, subtle, and rustle of leaves, twigs snapping, distant growls from somewhere in the forest. But the sounds grew closer, deliberate, enough to send a chill down his spine. He froze, scanning the shadows around him. His camera was in his hand, and he was taking some random shots of the valley at night when suddenly he felt something massive moving behind him. He spun just in time to see a hulking figure covered in dark fur from head to toe, lunging toward him. Heart racing, the ranger lifted his camera in reflex and snapped a single shot, the flash illuminating the creature with just a heartbeat. The next morning, campers on a nature hike came across the broken camera on the forest floor. The camera's body was scratched and the lens was shattered. Park rangers extended their search higher into the cliffs. There, they found the ranger's backpack, shotgun, and wide-brimmed hat laying near the edge of the cliff. Nearby, enormous footprints were pressed deep into the soil, far too large for any human and unlike any creature they had ever seen. They resembled the footprints of a giant human rather than an animal. The campers were engrossed in the story, savoring their s'mores as they listened. Jason stood on the opposite side of the fire, his body language acting out parts of the tale. He spoke deliberately, recounting the discoveries, the broken camera, the ranger's belongings, the enormous footprints. As he sat down, he added that some believe it had been a bear, while others thought it might be a creature walking on 2 legs, perhaps a Sasquatch. The campers sat quietly, The marshmallows still melting on the sticks over the fire as their eyes widened with each word. Jason's deliberate pauses drew them in, and the flickering flames cast long, dancing shadows across the clearing, making every rustle in the trees feel alive. As the tale concluded, the clearing fell silent. Everyone remained still, caught in the weight of the story. Jason and the counselor exchanged small, knowing smiles before turning their attention back to the campers. He lowered himself onto a single log near the fire, hands reaching out to warm them in the flames. Looking around at the wide-eyed campers, he finished the story with a single, deliberate sentence. To this day, no one knows what happened or where the missing went, only that the eyes in the dark are still watching.